So the astrology of the week of 9 May 2022 through 15 May 2022, it's a big week of astrology. There's some massive activity happening in the sky, as there often is, especially with astrologers. We like to kind of hype things up, don't we? But this is pretty big. You've got Jupiter changing signs. It's very rare, or somewhat rare, to have Jupiter changing signs. Jupiter enters a fire sign for the first time since 2019. And then you also have Mercury retrograde beginning, and we're still marching in this land between eclipses, this strange space. So let's dive in, let's look at these charts, let's check out what is going on. My name is S.J. Anderson. Welcome to my channel. Welcome to the astrology of this week, weekly astrology. I record it and release it every week. Welcome here, another week. We're kind of riding on. I can feel some big, powerful energy, and we're kind of riding these waves, the cusp of great change. We're on the cusp of this energetic summer. Hopefully you've got some cool plans in the Northern Hemisphere. If you're down under, the cusp of a winter period, maybe you can enjoy that similarly. But we're on the cusp of some big, big energetic and astrological shifts and changes. And of course, we're in eclipse season, which can often usher in those types of changes. And so I hope you're enjoying it. I hope you're enjoying being alive, a sentient being, feeling reality as it unfolds. That's what we're kind of born to do, right? We're born to live and feel and change and adapt and move ahead and march on. So let's just jump right into a very, very exciting week of astrology. Again, welcome here. Right off the bat, I just want to say my three themes, distilling these three themes from the week. First one is that Mercury will station retrograde this week. It happens on Tuesday at about 1347 here in Central Europe. It's going to bring those blocks, delays, confusions, confusions plural, like there's multiple, as if that's a noun, confusion, I'm not sure if you can pluralize confusion. Now I'm actually living out this Mercury retrograde as it's getting very close to the station here as I record. So, this Mercury retrograde arrives, and we're going to feel that, maybe opportunities for reviews. After all, the Mercury retrograde is in Gemini, the sign that Mercury is quite comfortable in. Second major story of the week is Jupiter entering Aries. Jupiter enters Aries the day after, actually hours after Mercury stations retrograde. That happens 1:22 a.m. on Wednesday, 11 May here in Central Europe, so in the evening on Tuesday. And so we're going to get a big chunk of this week with Jupiter freshly in Aries and the excitement that can bring while we have a waxing moon in between eclipses. What an exciting week, I think, with this kind of invigoration. A strange invigoration, but invigoration nonetheless. And then the third story is the Libra moon. This will be my transit of the week, this Libra moon. Tough choices this week to find a moon that isn't kind of harmed, or that the ruler of the moon isn't harmed. It's kind of a tough week to get a moon that's really strong to work with. I've chosen this Libra moon to settle us into Aries benefic season. That's what I'm going to call this time, because we have both benefic planets in Aries. So this is Aries benefic season until Venus leaves Aries at the end of May. So we're going to have a nice period of May for your Aries sector with these benefic planets there, giving you love and hope and optimism wherever you find Aries in your chart. So get excited about that. Now, what else is happening this week? There's a bunch of other stuff. I'm going to leave it at what I have just shared, because that's what I'm doing now. So let me move on to the first chart. This chart includes where are we? Sorry, I've got, this apartment I'm in, it's just, there's always noise everywhere, and so I get distracted, especially when I'm recording. I'm like trying to be a little conscientious of that noise, but so excuse my pause there. Let's come back to the chart. First chart this week is the Mercury retrograde station, 10 May, Tuesday, 1347 in the Western Balkans on Central European Daylight Time. And, look at the chart. Look at this chart. It's Gemini. It's 4 degrees Gemini, or the 5th degree of Gemini for Mercury. Anytime you have a retrograde station, check out that part of your chart. Check out what else is happening. Angular. So you might say 4 degrees of mutable signs, or any mutable placements, really. I like that this chart interests me because you have the moon closely squaring Mercury the moment of that retrograde station. And you have Mars, right, and Jupiter still in Pisces there with Neptune hanging out. And so you've got this immutable T-square by sign and by degree, you know, maybe not as much if you're an orbit-based astrologer. But still, I think that the mutable sector is very much in play right now. And I'm going to say this right now because I've just been tweeting on Twitter this morning about Gemini as a sector, mutable signs, how important they are in 2022. And I'm just going to give you the quick rundown. This eclipse season, we have a planet stationing retrograde in Gemini, Mercury. Next eclipse season, which is at the October and November of 2022, we have a planet stationing retrograde in Gemini. Mars will be making its retrograde station in Gemini in between eclipses in the fall, just like we're in between eclipses now. But look where Mars is. It's squaring Mercury. So there's a mutable overcoming square that Mars makes to Mercury during this retrograde station by sign. And so this, the major thing is that this moment in time is very important for how the second part of this year is going to go, because there are these major astrological, energetic, symbolic imprints. You know, the astrological symbolic matrix is activating and imprinting on us at this moment of time. Immutable activation with Mars in a mutable sign. Mercury stationing retrograde, where you'll have Mars stationing retrograde later. You'll have Jupiter changing signs this week. Remember, Jupiter comes into Aries. During that eclipse season, in between eclipses, you have Jupiter coming back into Pisces. And so many of these degrees are reactivated and reinvigorated and kind of re-imprinted for this eclipse season at the end of 2022. Now, someone was asking me on Twitter, Hyson Lutz, I'm sorry if I mispronounce your name, Hyson, but the question was, well, what does it mean? It's the classic question we get on Twitter a lot with astrologers. Well, tell me what it means. And it's a good question. I kind of like it. Some astrologers get annoyed, but I think, you know, I'm a public astrologer. I have a public dialogue with the whole world on my social media. So it's fair to someone to say, hey, well, what does it mean? And the major things I would just say, anytime you have symbolic activation, re-imprinting at later on in a timeline, and this could be 20 years or 20 days or 20 months or 20 hours, there's going to be a similarity in energy. So I would just say, setting everything else aside, what's happening right now? We're going to be dealing with that again in the fall. And I'll give you the answer in terms of a mundane astrological perspective. We're dealing with all of the themes. The market's crashing, right? This is happening this week. So that's Mercury. Mercury is trading in markets. That's a major theme of this current week that we've just been traversing through, and this next week that we'll be traversing through. Look for that to maybe have an echo, not financial advice, but I wouldn't be surprised if we have some kind of market instability during the next eclipse season. What else is happening now? Well, we have reproductive rights and the Constitution and the courts. All of those things are front and center. I think that's going to return in the fall. And why wouldn't it? We have an election on the day of the lunar eclipse on 8 November. The second eclipse in the fall is the day of an election, the midterm elections in America. And this is a major political issue that's facing the country, which is what happens. Do you have these, I'm not going to go into it, basically federalism, reproductive rights, huge important issues. And so that's going to return. And God willing, we just can resolve it soon. And I mean, I'll just say it here. Yeah, I do support the reproductive rights, so let's just hope that trigger is going to settle. The third thing is we have a war, in the Black Sea, right, in Ukraine. And so will that be around? And I'll say this here now. I was hoping for that peace agreement, Jupiter and Neptune conjoining in Pisces. Where's the peace agreement? We haven't gotten it. And so I'm a little nervous and concerned about the elongated nature of this conflict in Ukraine and the escalation from both sides. That I'm looking for a theme. So this was, this question was, well, what does it mean? What's active? And I'm saying what's activated now will continue and to be activated and potentially reactivated in 2022's second eclipse season. And what was the last thing I was thinking? The question of information. We've got the Musk purchase of Twitter. That's been around for a little while now, but it's still lingering. Questions of what is truth? Who gets to control truth? What is suppression of information democratic? Is it not democratic? All of those themes related to Mercury in Gemini, which is information and knowledge and communication and detail and the specifics. Mars is suppression, it's excising information, it's shutting things down and turning things away. So that's just my quick answer. I think these themes are going to continue to be relevant in 2022, and they will return to prominence in October and November of 2022. Let me come back to my chart here. Let me come back to my PPT. That's what they call these in China, PPT, PowerPoint presentation. And so I have a Mercury stations retrograde Gemini. It's a very strong sector of the sky for Mercury, and that's a big note here. Mercury in the 5th degree has domicile rulership, has night triplicity rulership, and has term rulership. And so during the daytime, it's a +7 in these systems that astrologers assign, and at nighttime, it's a +10. Very powerful sector of the sky for Mercury, and I think that's a strong mitigating factor this week for the retrograde station, where hopefully it's not as much of like harmful blocks and delays, and it's more maybe the opportunities to pause and review in an auspicious way and in a useful way. And then I also think about this chart, like I said, the moon's in Virgo, and so maybe this is more pronounced with Mercury and mercurial themes coming front and center this week. I know it's a shaky week for the markets, like I said. I expect that to be a major story this week, whatever happens, whether there's sell-offs and then bounces, or markets are crazy. Mercury's a crazy energy. Mercury's all over the place, right? Trading is all over the place. You see people yelling and screaming and buying and selling, and money, which Mercury can signify, you know, ups and downs. I think that'll be a major story as it's been this last few days. But this lunar transit through Virgo, I think, is an underscoring or a kind of amplification of mercurial energy. The next thing I have here, Mars squares from Pisces, is interesting, and I just went through all that. But because of Mars's long retrograde in Gemini in the second half of 2022, so we're getting this preview, and I just went through all of the mundane factors that I'm watching. I want you to think about your life, and you can look at your chart if you're astrologically literate. Where's Gemini? Where's Mercury? Where's Virgo? That could be a story here that you are probably already engaged with quite directly, given these transits I'm looking at currently, and then might return. And it may return in a more full force, because you're going to have Mars in Gemini for 8 months. August 20th, I think, 2022, or somewhere close to there, till like March 23rd, 2023. A long, long time for Mars in Gemini. So get familiar with Gemini. Make peace with Gemini. Get out in front of those house topics. Consider them for 5 to 10 minutes even. Just write out, here's the topics of this house. Here's my life. Okay, how do I feel about those topics? Do some free journaling about those topics, because we're here and engaged with a very dynamically activated Gemini sector. And so, okay, what do I have here? And it's setting up this long ordeal we're going to have with that later in the year. Now is it being set up with this Mercury station retrograde. And then I said, I wanted this final point I want to remember these review opportunities. You know, I think Mercury retrograde is good for waiting and pausing. Settling with waiting and pausing and just waiting. You know, sometimes we can't wait. We have to act during a Mercury retrograde, but I often use it just to wait. Well, what can you do while you're waiting? You can review, you can do prep work, you can do thinking and analyzing. And this might be perfect for a Mercury retrograde in Gemini for this first week or so, where you'll have Mercury in Gemini in these strong degrees. What can you do planning for right now? What's going to happen for you in June and July? Do you need to do, make some emails, write some emails, contact people, review your plans and designs before you get ready to power out of this retrograde? June and July is going to be an epic couple of months. This summer is going to be like epically unique, because we're going to have that fire Jupiter, which I'll talk all about. We're going to have a lot of dignity in the sky in June. You're going to have just forward movement with planets. And I think it can be a very exciting opportunity for these few months before that second round of this mutable madness hits. Maybe that's a good thing. Mutable madness 2022. But the second round we get with Mars in Gemini retrograde. So I'm going to leave that here. Excuse me, for the Mercury retrograde chart. I'm just going to leave that. I mean, we could break everything down. There's always deeper breakdowns, but those are my kind of high level points. Okay, my next slide. Oh, looks like I have a blank slide. I think I'm just going to delete that because I actually shouldn't have a blank slide. We should come now to the next chart I'm examining this week, 11 May 2022, 1:23 in the morning, Central European Daylight Time. Jupiter will enter Aries. So about 12 hours after Mercury stations retrograde, it'll still be stationary, potentially and just inching backward. Jupiter comes in and blasts through that last degree of the zodiac and enters Aries 1, 0 degrees Aries. The beginning of life, right? The beginning of our zodiac. Jupiter comes to expand and blow through that degree. And I think that alone is highly symbolic. Fresh starts, new beginnings are arriving this week, collectively and interpersonally. And especially maybe for cardinal risings or people with pronounced cardinal placements, get ready to blast through and do some new kickstarts and some new energetic kind of activation. Very powerful. I'm very excited about it. Some of you that might know my chart, I got a lot of Aries, and I just am very, very pumped about this. This Aries, this is the story of Jupiter and Aries. 6 months in 2022, 2 months back in Pisces at the end of 2022, re-enters Aries on the winter solstice, and then we'll have 6 more months in Aries for that largely the first half of 2023. I think this round of Jupiter and Aries is pretty unique in some ways because you have Mars and Aries together only this round. You'll have Mars and Aries with Jupiter and Venus there, and the moon for a few days, 3 days, I think 2-3 days at the end of May. That's a special time to really activate Aries. We're not going to have that sort of power of an activation in 2023, but what we do get, there's a lot more time with Mars and Jupiter together. Venus and Jupiter, in Aries in 2023. And I kind of like the benefic season. The Aries benefic season in 2023 it's longer and it's still special in its own way. Mars not being there can sometimes be a little bit of relief, and just relaxation. Mars can really force us into powerful action. Some of you that want to ride those Mars waves can maybe love it. Some of us love it, but some of us, sometimes maybe it's too much. So that's just the basic map though. It's 2 doses of Jupiter in Aries. And this is the first dose. It starts this week. It starts Wednesday, early in the morning in Central Europe. And this is the thing about Jupiter. It's so cool. In these first 6 degrees, Jupiter is very strong. I think it's 6. I counted this earlier. 1, 2, 3, 6 degrees. It's Jupiter's power degrees, or Egyptian terms, in Aries. When you combine that with Jupiter having something called night triplicity rulership in Aries, at nighttime, for a bunch of this initial phase of Jupiter in Aries, I think this probably ends at some point like my guess would be August, probably September sometime. Jupiter will leave its Egyptian terms, maybe a little before that. But you're going to have a Jupiter that's just as strong as it is in Pisces, according to these point systems. I'm not a big point system astrologer, but they can be a stand-in. The major point, setting aside these point systems, you have a Jupiter that may be just as powerful as it was in Pisces, now in Aries for this first chunk of time, especially at nighttime. And it's a fire sign. It's a day sex sign. It's the outward world that Jupiter sort of has more comfort in. It's like Jupiter's all about selling things, telling people the truth, going out into the world, sharing ideas, giving gifts. It's a very kind of robust, people-oriented benefic in terms of larger groups potentially, or organizations, or social groups, or religious groups. And so this fire energy for Jupiter may even be more powerful for Jupiter in Aries, particularly in these first 6 degrees, than what we had in Jupiter and Pisces. So many people were let down by Jupiter and Pisces. I'm not sure, I don't want to challenge their feelings. Those feelings are certainly valid, but Jupiter and Pisces is more of the truth, the doses of truth that can be hard to digest. And it's ultimately useful in my experience and in my opinion, but these are not easy. It's not the easy side of Jupiter. It's the changing inner states and expectations. It's perfect, actually, when people say, well, Jupiter and Pisces didn't work out. Well, no, your expectations for Jupiter and Pisces and those not being met, that is Jupiter and Pisces. It's the truth that was then having to be digested when those expectations failed. That's your truth. That's your reality. That's Jupiter and Pisces. Okay, let me come back here. So I have here time to move, thinking about, let's just get it up actually. I'm mentioning, when does Jupiter leave its Egyptian terms? Let's find that out. I'm kind of teasing it, and people on this channel know people that watch this channel know I really do like to get specific at times, and why not? I have solar fire here. I was peeking into 2023, but let me come back. Let me go to the current clock. Let me bust through here. So there it is. Jupiter is still in its Egyptian terms. We're in June, so it's a lot earlier than I thought, actually. Yeah, I should have known that. Here, Jupiter leaves those Egyptian terms right here in mid-June. You will lose that Jupiter. It's going to move through, and it makes sense because the planet moves, and as it approaches its retrograde station, it slows. So Jupiter moves fast through those first 6 degrees, and then it starts slowing. So anyhow, June 17th-ish is when we lose it. This extra power Jupiter. Right now, I'm at May 8th, Sunday, May 8th. So look for the next 6 weeks to have this power Aries, power Jupiter, a uniquely opportune moment for that. Now Jupiter remains the nitriplicity ruler of Aries in all of the degrees of Aries, so we don't lose that dignity. All right, let's come back. Let's come back to the PowerPoint. Next slide. Mars will be in aspect to Jupiter during much of its time in Aries. Okay, and this is a key point. It's only when Mars is in Taurus for 6 weeks, from 5 July till 20 August 2022. That's the only time during Jupiter's stint in Aries that Jupiter will not be received by Mars. Just a long way of saying Jupiter gets support from Mars in the sky because of their configuration based on the signs that they're in. And that's all of 2022 except for 6 weeks, and then all of 2023. You will have Mars and Jupiter Mars receiving Jupiter. And so I like that for this time of Jupiter in Aries. The delays that may come during the retrograde in the fall, Mars's retrograde will impact Jupiter in Aries, particularly its final moments in Aries in October, where Mars is stopping and stationary. And then when Jupiter re-enters Aries on 20 December, Mars will still be retrograde. And that initial period in 2023 of Jupiter, and late 2022 and early 2023 of Jupiter in Aries, look for that to maybe, we're still trying to find our footing with how we're going to use that second pass of Jupiter in Aries. Mars stations direct, I think it's 12 January. It's that first 15 days of January. Don't have that exact date up on the mind right now, maybe 5 January or 12 January. But after Mars stations direct and starts moving forward, then it can really support Jupiter. It's a sextile, Mars and Gemini, now stationing direct and moving forward, and Jupiter in Aries, that lovely sextile between Aries and Gemini. One of my favorite pairs of signs, or that Aries-Gemini energy. I'm an Aries sun. I love my Gemini friends, and I love the verbal nature, the curiosity, the excitement that Gemini can bring. But you'll get that in 2023's dose of Jupiter and Aries, that lovely exchange. Okay, let me come back. And what do I have here? Truth and power in taking steps. Sometimes the internal search for truth, maybe Jupiter and Pisces, gets confusing, right? What the hell's going on? I'm lost in my own mind and in my own emotions, the soup of the emotions. Sometimes the real power comes in just taking the steps. It's like, okay, I'm going to set the feelings aside for a second. The thoughts and the fears, I'm going to let those go, and I'm just going to start getting into the actions. Let the actions be the teacher. Let the doing show us what's true and real by discovering the boundaries of reality, by taking actions and moving forward in reality. There's a whole thing with like the dating world where they say, if you're like trying to initiate dates with people, the only way you know the boundaries of that is to just go out and do it. Just go ask everybody out. If you're looking for a date, get active and ask people out, and then you'll discover those boundaries. But sitting in a place of fear, you'll never know maybe who you could have dated, or what the kind of people you might be more compatible with, unless you try, unless you go and do and try. So that's just one example. The other thing might be the faith without works is dead. I saw that Bible verse. Something came across my computer screen this week. Faith without works is dead. kind of love that idea in a way. Just that, yeah, we can do all the attitude in the world doesn't get the meal baked, or the meal made, for example, or the bread baked. You really have to, like for me, if I want a glass of tea, I got to go put the water on, turn that fire on, put the tea in, clean the pots. That's the only way to get the tea, unless I want to then go out and try to pay someone else to do it. But if I want tea here, I've got to put some elbow grease and work and effort into making that tea to get the satiety, the satisfaction of the tea. I've got some new teas here. God, I love, I've got an Earl Grey finally, a really nice Earl Grey. Really enjoying that Earl Grey. Okay, so let me come back. That's my kind of, this Jupiter and Aries transit, it's going to come up a lot in my videos. We're going to be talking about it all the time, especially when it gets activated by other transits. But this is kind of an overview and an introduction to Jupiter and Aries. I hope you can take something from it as you're planning and preparing for the week and for the year and for next year. All right, let me come back. Next chart, this is the transit of the week, the Libra moon. Okay, I mentioned earlier that it was a tough go this week to pick a transit of the week, and we can just walk through it. Right now, we're dealing with a Leo moon, okay, the end of a Leo moon. Here, let me go back to solar fire. We got it up, we can animate the chart. Here it is, here's solar fire. And you can see where this Leo moon, as I sit here, is 13 degrees Leo, approaching an opposition to Saturn, which that moon will perfect tomorrow, midday. That's a rough moon. I mean, moon Saturn is particularly in an opposition, not the easiest energy. These are transits you may want to brace for, or get ready to kind of protect yourself from the roughness of life. And this is the T-square with the sun. This is square the lunar nodes. This is part of the fixed intensities of 2022. We're in a moon that's activating that. So not my pick for the best energy of the week or the transit of the week. Look at the Virgo moon. You've got a stationary and a retrograde Mercury ruling that moon. Maybe right when the moon enters for like a few degrees there, you've got this kind of Mercury, but it's basically stationary. And the interpretive principle here is a planet as it stations retrograde blocks delays. A planet as it stations, but power, punctuated blocks and delays, and then a planet when it stations direct, punctuated removals of the obstacles. That's why I like direct station energy actually as a power transit. Sometimes you want to get that in a chart, in my view. So, but let's come the direct station, not the retrograde station. So this Mercury energy opposite Mars, look at that Mars, that moon, first the moon is opposite Saturn, then opposite Mars, and the ruler is this retrograde Mercury. Then if we go through to the Libra moon, I mean, this is really all we're left with. Now the downside, Venus, the ruler of Libra, in its exile in Aries. What's the problem with a Venus in Aries? Well, it's too fast, too quick, too much pleasure, not enough stasis and settlement and staying withness that Venus really likes. That's the risk with this Venus in Aries. Now, you've got Jupiter there. So all of the Libra moon transit has Jupiter now in Aries. And so you now have the cardinals. Libra, as the moon has transited through Libra, it's been a while, right? 5 months of Jupiter in Pisces since Jupiter has made aspects to the moon while it's been in Libra. And now you get Jupiter now in cardinal signs and aspecting the moon. So I'm kind of putting a lot here on Jupiter to mitigate the Venus in its exile. But then if we keep going, then you have a Scorpio moon. I almost never, I don't know what would, and bless you Scorpio moons out there, I'm one of them, but in terms of an electional astrological principle, Scorpio moons are just off the table pretty much categorically, and this is textual. I mean, almost every book of electional astrology or astrological magic, you just don't pick a Scorpio moon. You can get the moon aspecting things in Scorpio, aspecting fixed stars, but you just do not want a Scorpio moon. Even the lunar mansions. Now, malefic magic is different. I do not practice that, but maybe then you would pick a Scorpio moon. But let's keep going. So those are our choices this week. And now let me come back to the PPT, the PowerPoint. You see now the Libra moon. Here it is. I picked a moon where you've got Sag rising, you've got the moon here in early degrees of Libra, pretty close to the midheaven in that beautiful 11th house. Maybe my favorite placement for a moon in any kind of electional chart. Love that abundant 11th house where we connect with the larger abundance of reality through people or institute of all kinds of others that can support and love us. We're community often oriented. everything, going back to this Earl Grey, I mean, I'm drinking this really tasty tea. You know how many people labored to get that in my pot? A lot of people's labor went into that. That's the 11th house, you know, and then 12th, this connection between the 11th and 12th house. But this is important to acknowledge, like the abundance flows through groups of people. And I'm just super grateful for that. Anyhow, this is an aside. I like to put the moon in the 11th house, but I have it in this Libra moon chart. You've got the ascendant, trying to get the ascendant somewhat close to Venus there. I've got the moons, you know, it's a little bit separating from Jupiter. The midheaven's kind of close to Jupiter there. Anyhow, earlier degrees of cardinal are where the power is. And so you've got these fifth house, the rulers in the fifth house of abundance and joy and hope and creativity and fun. So this is a cool chart for working with a Libra moon, even though Venus is a little bit in a struggling zone for Venus. So, okay, let me come back. What else do I have here? First cardinal moon, a nice activation to get this transit of Jupiter in Aries started. So Jupiter comes into Aries and immediately we get a cardinal moon to feed and exchange with that Jupiter. I like this midweek. This will be Thursday and Friday with this Libra moon. Just to settle us in and bring that Jupiter in Aries, kind of usher it in and celebrate it. Okay, and then the last slide, what do I have here? Actually, that was it. I didn't write in. Okay, so there you go. I didn't write any more. Usually I do one round of edits for this PPT, and I did a little bit of editing as I went, but I just didn't put in that editing for me. This is already the Aries energy, the Mercury and Gemini, very fast energies. I'm working fast. I'm kind of overwhelmed, always busy and overwhelmed. Getting better at managing that. But so sorry about that. Let me just go back to chart. Is there anything else I can say here? What else? Well, what would you use this for? I mean, that's what I usually try to do. I could have one slide that maybe recently is that like some more of the technical astrology, and then maybe some interpretive astrology here. I just think about people and boundaries and rules in our relationships with Libra. You know, I think about navigating the various natures of people. You know, I'm around people a lot. I have a lot of clients. I've got a lot of friends. You know, social media is where I work and where I'm navigating and seeing clients, etc. There's all kinds of different people, different energies, different temperaments, different mentalities, different beliefs, even. And the best part of Libra, in my view, is the skills that Libra can often have, especially with auspicious planets or Venus, to navigate the variety of humans, you know, and to know how to approach this person and give them a certain energy. And then, you know, with another person, there's other skills that are required, other communication styles. So, you know, look for that as this Libra moon comes here. You know, maybe you're going to need to practice some of your boundaries or, you know, speak in a certain way to a certain group of people to, you know, I would say to placate. Maybe that's a negative version, but just to satisfy the needs of the moment relationally. So that's what I would say here. And, you know, the abundance that can flow through that. There's no shame or harm in showing up in relationships in a way that can maximize the benefit and the appropriateness within, you know, an ethical framework. There's nothing wrong with that. Now I've got tons of Libra too, so I'm sounding like a prototypical Libra here, but that's what I would just say. You know, if you're going to be using this energy for something this week, you know, connecting with people, accordances, agreements, even socializing in maybe a deliberate way with a purpose, you could use it for that. So, okay, let's just move it in there. I mean, I know I blazed through this. I just blazed through it. I just drank a pot of that Earl Grey. So I'm like totally juiced up right now. And I was tweeting earlier and like Twitter's there's a lot of activity right now. I'm seeing not only my tweets about Gemini, but I was seeing one of my favorite Twitter astrologers, Blaze Maximus, or Blaze, I think. He changes his Twitter name quite often, but Blaze has a bunch of tweets about this Mars and this Gemini connection as well right now. Let's see, my good friend, let me make sure that I can get my names correct here. I'm just always so over the place. Don't want to get names wrong. So Jessica Irene, she was tweeting as well. So I think there's a lot of energy right now around the mutable nature of our current moment and how that's going to impact the rest of this year. And I'm feeling quite energized. I can't wait to return to some of these conversations, post my video, and get back and to get engaged. And by the way, if you're an astrology student, I just want you to know that there's Twitter, there's social media, there's all kinds of ways to connect. And maybe that's some of what we can talk about with Gemini and Libra. Those are air signs, connecting with the outer world, talking about the 11th house earlier, sharing ideas, finding like-minded folks. Mercury rules Gemini. Mercury is the planet of astrology. Maybe you want to reach out a little bit or connect during some of this Gemini activation this year. Get used to or familiarize yourself with social media and the astrological community on social media. So, okay, let's pull a tarot card. Let's get a little bit of a dose of some divination here, as I like to do in these videos. What's coming through with this pure sortilege of the number generator pointing to a playing card or a cartomancy card. Let's see what's said here. Okay, we've got a card. Let me see what this card is. Give me 1 second to pull it up. So this is the Two of Hearts, fascination. That first decan of Cancer, the Venus is decan of Cancer right there, those first 10 degrees of Cancer. Interesting to see this. I wonder about the emotional, where are you emotionally? I mean, that's where I see this card right away. Are you supported? Do you have some love in your life or some people you can go to for comfort, to share what's on your heart? One of my favorite phrases, hey, what's on your heart? And you can open up and maybe find that person or those people that can nurture you, really. That's what Cancer is, the archetype of nurturance. Venus is the archetype of beauty and connection and love. And so I wonder with Venus in Aries now and Jupiter then coming to Aries, how that will impact that Cancer sector. With all those fire initiations, maybe we need to be sure to add a dose of emotional checking in with our people we love. And this is the Libra moon too, right? You think about the cardinal axis. You have Aries majorly activated. You have Libra majorly activated with that moon for a couple of days this week. But you're hitting the crux, the cardinal crux of any chart, and especially cardinal risings. So just be sure to, you're Capricorn, but this card is telling us in particular the safety, comfort emotionally, and the connective safety and comfort that you can find with people that you love or care about, or friends or family, or anybody that you're kind of Venusian safety or your kind of emotional support. As this eclipse season, and maybe this is eclipse season, the moon is about to be eclipsed next week, early next week. I didn't include it in this video, but I think I could have, because it's right at the edge. I think it's Monday next week is when the eclipse, maybe even early. So I think this is thinking about our nurturing in a period between eclipses. And I'll say this now, this next eclipse is a lot rougher. It's a lot rougher. I probably should have talked a lot more about that. But this is a preparation week for a kind of a really difficult eclipse. Moon in Scorpio, being eclipsed there. That's our safety and our comfort and our nurturance, right? And squaring Saturn. So this is, I think, telling me just to love ourselves, love yourself, find where the love is, find where the comfort and connection is as you hunker down and kind of as we and you get through this eclipse season and this next difficult eclipse to come out the other side. Okay, that is the weekly astrology. That's the weekly tarot. Thanks for being here. See you next week. Have an awesome week. We'll talk really soon.